Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Hi. Working at Supermart was supposed to be a simple job to help pay my bills while I finished college. But yesterday, everything changed. And now I'm caught up in a mess that could have killed someone. It all started about a month ago when our store got a new manager. Let's call her Karen. She came in with this attitude like she owned the place, even though most of us had been working there longer than she'd been in management anywhere. From day one, Karen was always trying to cut corners. She'd order us to skimp on cleaning supplies, telling us to water down the soap or use less of it. We all knew it wasn't right, but most of us needed our jobs and didn't want to rock the boat. My coworker Mia, who has pretty bad asthma, tried to speak up once about the lack of proper cleaning. Karen just brushed her off. Don't be so dramatic. A little dirt never hurt anyone. We're not running a hospital here. But our company policy says, I don't care what the policy says. I'm in charge here. And what I say goes. Unless you want to look for another job. That shut Mia up quick. We all knew jobs were hard to come by in our small town. Things came to a head yesterday. I wasn't there for the start of it, but Mia filled me in later. Apparently Karen had come in with this brilliant new idea for cleaning the floors. Listen up everyone, I've got a great new cleaning method that'll make this place shine like never before. Mix 3 bottles of bleach with 1 bottle of Fabuloso and use that on all the floors. Mia asks, are you sure that's safe? I've never heard of mixing those before. Of course it's safe. I read about it online. It'll save us money and time. Now get to it. Mia and our other coworker James didn't feel right about it, but they didn't want to argue. They mixed up the solution like Karen said, then started cleaning. Within an hour, Mia was feeling awful. Her chest was tight and she couldn't stop coughing. James wasn't doing much better. Mia says, Karen, I don't feel good. I think there is something wrong with this cleaning mix. You're just being lazy. Finish the job or go home without pay. Mia tried to keep working, but it got so bad that she had to leave. Karen was furious but couldn't stop her. And that's where I came in. My shift started a few hours after all this went down. As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. The smell hit me like a drug. It was sharp and chemical, burning my nose and eyes. What's that smell? James tells me. New cleaning solution Karen had us use. It's pretty strong. I tried to power through it, but within an hour I was feeling sick. My throat was burning and I kept dry heaving. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Karen, I need to go home. This smell is making me sick. Not you too. What's wrong with you people? It's just a little cleaning solution. This isn't normal. Something's really wrong here. Fine, go. But don't expect to get paid for a full shift. I left feeling guilty about abandoning James, but I could barely breathe. On the drive home, I noticed I had developed a deep, hacking cough that hadn't been there before. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mia and her asthma. What if she was even sicker than me? I decided to call her in the morning to check on her. When morning came, I called Mia. What she told me made my blood run cold. I'm in the hospital. They had to call poison control. What? Why? The doctor said I was exposed to chlorine gas. Apparently mixing bleach and Fabuloso creates it. I've been coughing up blood. I was horrified. I immediately started researching and found out that yes, mixing bleach and Fabuloso creates chlorine gas, a potentially deadly substance. I couldn't believe Karen had been so careless. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. Mia's family reported the incident to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They came and did a full investigation of our store. Karen tried to deny everything at first. I never told them to mix those chemicals. They must have done it on their own. But James and I stood firm. We told the investigators exactly what had happened. They also found security camera footage that backed up our story. The company didn't waste any time. Karen was fired on the spot. But that wasn't the end of it. Because she had knowingly endangered employees and customers, she was facing criminal charges. As for Mia, she was in the hospital for a week. The doctor said she was lucky. If she had been exposed much longer, could have had permanent lung damage or worse. The company paid for all of Mia's medical bills and gave her a hefty settlement. They also implemented new safety training for all employees and managers. James and I got compensation too for our exposure to the gas. But more importantly, we all got a new manager, one who actually cares about following safety protocols. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up sooner about Karen's corner cutting. Maybe if I had, things wouldn't have gotten so bad. But at least now, we're all a bit wiser. Karen, on the other hand, last I heard, she was facing a pretty serious lawsuit and potential jail time. Turns out, knowingly exposing people to toxic chemicals is a big deal. Who would have thought? In the end, I guess karma really does come back around. Karen's need to save a few bucks nearly cost someone their life. Now she's lost her job, her reputation, and possibly her freedom. I'm just a tree cutter for crying out loud, but here I am telling you about the day that turned my simple job into a nightmare. It was a regular Tuesday morning at our tree cutting company. My partner and I were in the office going through some paperwork when this lady walked in. She looked like your typical suburban mom, but there was something off about her. Her eyes had this wild look, like she was on a mission. She marched up to our desk and said, "I need your services immediately." I replied, "Sure, ma'am. What kind of tree work do you need?" That's when things got weird. She leaned in close and whispered, "I need you to cut down my neighbor's oak trees." I blinked, confused. Okay. Does your neighbor know about this?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, he's away right now. But don't worry. I'm on a neighborhood homeowners association. I have the authority." My partner and I exchanged looks. This didn't sound right. I asked, "Ma'am, do you have any paperwork from your neighbor or the homeowners association authorizing this?" She huffed. "Look, I don't have time for this. I'll pay you extra if you don't ask questions. Just tell anyone who asks that the owner requested it. Got it?" Now, alarm bells were ringing in my head. I stood up and said, "I'm sorry, but we can't do that. We need proper authorization for any job, especially one involving someone else's property." And that's when she lost it. Her face turned red and she started yelling, "Do you know who I am? I'm trying to teach that horrible neighbor a lesson. He won't listen to my demands, so I'm taking matters into my own hands." My partner stepped in. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave. What you're asking is illegal, and we won't be a part of it." She didn't like that one bit. She grabbed a stapler from our desk and hurled it at my partner. "You can't talk to me like that." I reached for the phone. "That's it. I am calling the police." As I dialed, she lunged at me, trying to grab the phone. My partner managed to hold her back while I talked to the dispatcher. Within minutes, we heard sirens approaching. The woman seemed to realize she was in trouble. She backed away from us, and when the police walked in, her whole demeanor changed. She started sobbing and pointed at us. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. These men, they molested my daughter." My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman continued, "I had to take her home to save her from these monsters after they assaulted her." The officers looked at us sternly. One of them asked, "Is this true?" I sputtered, "What? No, absolutely not. There was never any daughter here. This woman came in asking us to illegally cut down her neighbor's trees. When we refused, she attacked us." My partner nodded vigorously. "It's true. We have security cameras. You can check the footage." The woman's eyes widened at the mention of cameras. She tried to backpedal. No, you don't need to check any cameras. I know what happened." One of the officers said, "Ma'am, we take accusations of child molestation very seriously. We'll need to review the footage." While one officer watched the security tapes with us, the other stayed with the woman. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. The footage clearly showed her entering alone, our conversation, and her attack on us. When the officers confronted her with this evidence, she completely lost it. She grabbed a pruning saw from a nearby shelf and swung it at the closest officer. "Ma'am, put down the weapon now." But she wasn't listening. She kept swinging and screaming incoherently. The officers had no choice. One of them pulled out his taser and fired. The woman went down twitching, but even then, she wouldn't stop. As they tried to handcuff her, She started spitting at everyone. One of the officers says, "We need a spit mask here." They managed to get a mask over her mouth, but she was still thrashing and trying to bite through it. As they led her away, one of the officers turned to us. "I am sorry about this, gentlemen. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement." My partner and I nodded, still in shock from what had just happened. The officer says, "Don't worry. With the video evidence and her behavior, you won't be facing any charges, but we'll need to document everything for her arrest." I slumped into my chair trying to process it all. I can't believe she made up that story about her daughter. Who does something like that? My partner shook his head. "I don't know, man. Some people are just. I don't even have the words for it." We spent the rest of the day at the police station giving our statements and filling out paperwork. The officers told us that the woman was facing multiple charges, including assault, filing a false police report, attempted assault on a police officer. As we finally left the station, my partner turned to me. "You know, when I got into the tree cutting business, I never thought I'd end up in a police station because some crazy lady tried to frame us for a crime we didn't commit." I laughed weakly. Yeah, they definitely don't prepare you for this in tree cutting school. We decided to close the office for the rest of the week. We both needed some time to recover from the whole ordeal. Karen tried to plead not guilty, but with the video evidence and the testimony of the officers, she didn't stand a chance. She ended up getting sentenced to jail time and ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation. We later found out from the police that Karen had a history of harassing her neighbors and making false claims. The oak trees she wanted us to cut down? Well, they belonged to a new family in the neighborhood who had refused to let Karen dictate the color they could paint their house. Can you believe that? It took a while, but eventually things at work got back to normal. We installed better security measures at the office just in case, and we became a lot more cautious about taking on new clients, always making sure to get proper documentation for any job. But hey, now at parties, whenever I say, "Did I ever tell you about the time I was falsely accused of a crime because I refused to illegally cut down some trees?" Yeah, that always gets people's attention. My 74-year-old dad has always been a stubborn man, and when he got sick, this time his stubbornness almost cost him his life. Dad had just had a biopsy and the doctors told him to take it easy. But did he listen? Nope. 2 hours after the operation, he went right back to work. I couldn't believe when I got the call from Mom. "Your father is gone to work." I told him not to, but he wouldn't listen. "What? He just had surgery. I'll try calling him." I called Dad's cell, but he didn't pick up. I left a message, hoping he'd come to his senses. "Dad, it's me. Please go home and rest. You just had surgery, for crying out loud." But Dad being Dad, he ignored everyone's advice. The next day we got another call from Mom, and this time it was serious. "Your father is stuck in the bathroom. He can't walk. I've called 911. My heart sank. I knew this was bad. When we got to the hospital, the news just kept getting worse. Not only had Dad overexerted himself, but the biopsy results came back. He had cancer. Invasive moderately differentiated keratinizing squamous cell carcinoma to be exact. It was a mouthful, and it was scary as hell. You think this news would make Dad slow down, right? Wrong. He was demanding to be released early, insisting he needed to go back to work. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Dad says, "I'm fine. I need to get back to the office. There is work to be done." "Dad, you're not fine. You have cancer. You need to rest and focus on getting better." "Don't tell me what I need to do. I've been working since before you were born." It was clear that Dad couldn't accept that his body wasn't keeping up with his spirit anymore. And Mom, well, she was in complete denial about the whole situation. "Your father has always been a hard worker. He knows what he's doing." "Mom, he collapsed yesterday. He needs help, whether he wants to admit it or not." The tension in the family was reaching a boiling point. I knew I had to do something. Living in Philadelphia, I decided to drive up to Scranton to help out and try to smooth things over. We had a family meeting scheduled to discuss Dad's treatment and the future of our family business. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I had to be there. And that's when I hit my next roadblock. My wife Sally. We share one car. When I told her I needed it to drive to Scranton, she flat out refused. "Sally, I need to go help my parents." Dad's sick, and the family's falling apart. But I need the car for my babysitting jobs. You're not hearing me out. I understand you need the car, but this is an emergency. I'll pay for your Ubers and even rent you a car for the week. No, I need our car. You can't take it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father had cancer, my family was in crisis, and all she could think about was her babysitting gigs. Fine, I'll handle it myself. I'll get a lift to the airport and rent a car there. You're being so unreasonable and unempathetic to my needs. I was floored. Unempathetic? Unreasonable? I was the one trying to compromise here. But there was no arguing with her. I ended up spending hundreds more on a lift to the airport and renting a car there, instead of the cheaper option near our home. As I drove to Scranton, I couldn't help but feel angry and hurt. Here I was trying to juggle my sick father, my family's crisis, and my wife's self centeredness. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulder. When I arrived in Scranton, things were even worse than I imagined. Dad was home from the hospital, but he was still insisting on going to work. Mom was running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to keep up with Dad's demands while pretending everything was normal. Dad says, I'm going to the office tonight. There is a big project I need to oversee. I tell him, Dad, you can't. You need to rest. The doctor said, I don't care what the doctor said. I've been running this business for 50 years, and I'm not stopping now. Your father knows best, dear. Don't worry so much. I felt like I was taking crazy pills. How could they not see how serious this was? The family meeting the next day was a disaster. Dad refused to discuss treatment options, insisting he was fine. My brother was more concerned about his share of the business and Dad's health, and Mom just sat there nodding along with whatever Dad said. We need to talk about treatment options. The doctor said, I don't need treatment. I'm fine. Brother says, what about the business? Who's going to run it if you're sick? Are you kidding me? Dad's health is more important than the business right now. Now, let's not argue. Your father knows what he's doing. I felt like I was going to explode. I excused myself. I went outside to get some air. As I stood there trying to calm down, my phone buzzed. It was Sally. When are you coming home? I need the car tomorrow for a big babysitting job. I need you to do some stuff for me at the moment, so I need you here ASAP. That was the last straw for me. I couldn't believe how selfish she was being. I took a deep breath and texted back. I don't know when I'll be back. My family needs me here. But what about my needs? You're being so selfish. I didn't respond. I couldn't deal with her right now on top of everything else. I went back inside, determined to do whatever I could to help my family, with or without Sally's support. The next few days were filled with doctor's appointment, arguments with Dad about resting, and trying to keep the peace between everyone. Through it all, Sally kept texting and calling, complaining about how inconvenient this all was for her. Finally, after a week of non-stop stress and family drama, I managed to convince Dad to start treatment and take a step back from work. It wasn't easy, but seeing him collapse again after trying to go to the office finally scared him enough to listen. As I packed up to head home, I felt exhausted but relieved that things were somewhat under control. And that's when I got another call from Sally. I hope you're on your way home. I have a big babysitting job tomorrow and I need you to run some errands for me. Sally, I've been dealing with a family crisis. My dad has cancer. Can you please try to be understanding? Understanding? What about you? You left me for a week. You're so selfish. That was it. I'd had enough. You know what, Sally? I think we need to have a serious talk when I get home. When I finally got back to Philadelphia, I sat Sally down and told her everything. How hurt and unsupported I felt. How her behavior during this crisis had made me reevaluate our relationship. She tried to argue, but I stood my ground. I'm sorry, Sally, but I can't be with someone who can support me during the toughest time of my life. I think we need to separate. What? You can't do this to me. What about my babysitting jobs? How will I get around? That's not my problem anymore. You made it clear that your babysitting jobs were more important than my family's health crisis. Now you can figure it out on your own. Sally was furious, but I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. As I moved out and started my new life, I heard through mutual friends that Sally was struggling to keep up with her babysitting jobs without a car. She had to cancel several high paying gigs and lost some of her best clients. Meanwhile, I found a small apartment closer to my parents, making it easier to help out with dad's treatment. It wasn't easy, but with the stress of my unsupportive marriage gone, I could focus on what really mattered: my family. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.